What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Boozer here. Thanks for stopping by. Today's video, we got a little bit more of a teaser reveal here for the brand new content Grim Forest. This time we're going to be talking about the bosses. They were teased in this earlier kind of video from yesterday. I do have the kit breakdowns here for the bosses, so let's jump right into it. All right, let's see what Playroom has to say about this boss. So we get a sneak peek there at the goblin boss, Fyrigus, the Trovemaster. Greedy and elusive like all loot thieves, he excels at utilizing evade and slipping away from danger. That's going to be super annoying, evade. And when he isn't dodging your blows, he shields himself behind a powerful new protection buff, gold-plated. Be cautious when unleashing all your might into his gold-plated armor. Breaking it injures not only Fyrigus, but your team as well. Oh man, kind of like reflect damage, I guess. Gold-plated buff grants Fyrigus the Trovemaster layers of additional HP beyond their max HP. Gold-plated layers cannot be removed, stolen, or have the duration increased or decreased when Fyrigus receives damage. While under gold-plated layers, it is first applied to the gold-plated layers. Okay, so you got an extra stacking HP. That's not part of your HP pool. That also reflects damage. Okay. Each layer of gold-plated can block a certain amount of damage and is destroyed after receiving that amount of damage. Okay, kind of like a mini shield. When a gold-plated layer is destroyed, Fyrigus will receive damage equal to the value of the gold-plated layer. And other enemies will also receive a portion of that damage. Any surplus damage to the gold-plated layer is dealt directly to Fyrigus' HP. Like the way I'm envisioning it is basically multiple shield layers on top of him that have reflect damage and also some splash damage too. So a little bit interesting. It seems pretty strong and it seems specific to him so far. All right, so now we know what we're dealing with. Let's check out his kit. All right, guys, so here is the kit for Fyrigus, the Trovemaster. Now keep in mind he is a boss, so he will have all of the almighty stuff. Almighty immunity. So he is immune to all of the popular, big CC stuff. Hunter's Gaze is added here. He's also immune to HP exchange, HP balancing, and cooldown increasing effects. So nothing crazy is going to happen with this guy. Awakening bonus. So we do have the, reduce less damage when we have higher awakenings. Almighty Strength. Max HP hits cannot exceed 5% of his max HP. Immune to decreased speed, and HP burns cannot exceed 1% of the poison's max HP. So all of that stuff baked into this boss kit. So let's check out what he can do here. So I guess his A1 attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of stealing one random buff from each enemy. That is hella annoying. So an AoE attack with the steal buff, very annoying. A2, 3-turn cooldown. Can't catch me. Attacks all enemies. Places decreased speed, decreased attack on all enemies for 2 turns. Steal 30% of their turn meters. Super annoying. This effect cannot be resisted by targets under any buffs. So if you buff your team, he places, this effect cannot be resisted. Okay, so the turn meter steal cannot be resisted, but you can still resist the decreased speed and decreased attack if you're under buffs. And I guess if you have block debuffs, you just block it outright, but the turn meter steal you cannot block. I mean, maybe Marius can do something about that, right? Because Marius has the passive that works off of his turn meter getting pushed back. So maybe Marius can actually do some damage to him. The damage inflicted by the skill is increased by 10% for each gold-plated layer. All right. So, I mean, not too crazy. I think it's going to be pretty hard for you to bring teams in with 0 buffs or have enough resistance to resist all this stuff. So I assume you just bring in a team with buffs and then just eat this 30% turn meter reduction. Maybe you have other ways to mitigate some of that 30%. 30% pushback is pretty big, but decreased speed, decreased attack, you can block debuff or resist it. And then he has a boosted damage here for gold-plated layers. We just went over gold-plated, the definition in the previous slide. Let's check out his A3 here. Hardened Avarice. 5-turn cooldown, so it's big. Places 5 layers of gold-plated on Fyrigus the Trovemaster. Each layer is equal to 10% of his max HP, so he's adding 50% HP to himself. Whenever a layer is destroyed, deal damage to Fyrigus equal to the value of the gold-plated layer, so 10%. So if you destroy 10%, if you destroy one shield, he takes 10% damage. Is that how it works? Also deals damage to Fyrigus's enemies equal to 5% of the layer value. So you're gonna get reflect. You're gonna get reflect hurt when you break one of his plates. Now I'm not sure what 5% looks like. I mean, his health pool could be massive, and 5% of a massive gold plate could be quite a lot. I'm not too sure. Fills Fyrigus' turn meter by 10% each time a gold plate layer is destroyed. While under gold plate layers, Fyrigus cannot evade. 10% doesn't seem like crazy amounts, but I mean, if you break all 5 at the same time, then he's going to gain 50% turn meter. Again, I have no idea how strong these plates are. They're 10% of his max HP. I assume 10% is going to be quite a bit. Each layer is going to take quite a bit of hits to destroy. He cannot evade. That's kind of nice. Kind of makes sense. I mean, you know, he's covered in gold. He's heavy. He can't evade. Let's check out his passive here. 24 Karat Thief has a 10% chance of evading an enemy skill and all of its effects. So that's just 10%. Okay. Increases his speed by 5 and chance to evade by 2 each time he is under at least 1 gold plated layer. Stacks up to 200 speed and 50% chance. Increases his speed by 5 and chance to evade by 2 each time he is under at least 1 gold plated stack. So I guess since the speed can go up to 200, I guess every time he applies the gold plated layer, it stacks up. Let me check this. Oh, sorry about that. It says each turn. So he just has to have 1 gold plate, and then every turn he will get plus 5 speed and plus 2% evade, up to 200 speed and 50% evade. I mean, this is a really high threshold, but I mean, it's possible. It's possible. 5 turn cooldown on this Hardened Avarice. I mean, on his gold plated ability. I wonder if you can place block buffs and the gold plated can be blocked. That might be the way to do it, right? It doesn't mention anything about gold plated being, I don't know, being able to bypass that. I assume block buffs is probably going to be the way to stop him from applying the gold plated buffs to himself. That must be the way to beat this guy. And then otherwise, it wouldn't be too bad. And then that's it. So he doesn't seem too crazy, actually. I mean, he has an irresistible turn meter steal, which is nasty. And it's going to be hard to resist that or actually play around that. But his gold-plated buff, if you can block buffs at the right time, that is the way to deal with this guy, and then he's just going to be a lot easier to deal with. He does have the built-in 10% evade, but after that, you just beat him down. He doesn't start the fight with gold-plated stacks or anything like that. That would have been kind of nasty if he started the fight with gold-plated stacks. That would have been pretty nasty, but he doesn't look too bad, actually. Now that you think about it, block buffs makes this a way easier, and definitely a top debuff to bring into this. You can't decrease speed him. So I mean, you probably just need to outgear him, especially with the turn meter steal here. I probably wouldn't even build resistance team to bring in against him, because most of the time you're probably just going to get the turn meter stolen. But you need damage to deal with this gold plates, and then you need a way to survive. For example, if you take so much splash damage from breaking the plates, you probably need a way to recover, so a reviver would be good. But anyways, that's a pretty good first look at him. Not too bad, not too crazy or anything like that, but I think it's a pretty interesting concept. He's just applying more and more of these gold plates on himself, which is pretty interesting. And this buff steal ability, I mean, very, very annoying, but you could also bring like protected buffs. That could be a way to deal with it as well. All right, cool. Let's go on to our next boss here. Let's check it out. All right, so this is called Mimic Skills, or it's called Mimic. I don't know if it's called Mimic Skills or if it's called Mimic. But it looked like a very scary chest here with some big nasty teeth. A surprise boss that roams the grim forest. It reveals itself only when you draw near. You can never be certain whether the treasure before you is a true reward chest or a mimic lurking behind its likeness. All right, that's pretty fun. This creature delights in preying upon your strongest damage dealers, feasting on their power and healing itself with every bite. Ingest. So this is a new thing. Whenever summoned to battle, the mini mimic will ingest the enemy champion with the highest crit damage. Okay, so it's crit damage, more crit damage tuning, guys. Whenever the mimic takes a turn in battle, the mini mimic will deal damage to the ingested champion equal to 25% of their current HP. Okay, the ingested champion will be freed from the mini mimic when it is defeated or after 4 turns has passed. I guess 4 turns you do 100% damage and then dies. While ingested, a champion is considered removed from battle. They cannot receive buffs, debuffs, instant effects, cannot be selected as a target for a skill. The ingested state cannot be removed except by defeating the mini mimic or waiting 4 turns. When ingesting a champion, the mini mimic will ignore block debuffs, veil, and perfect veil, and resistance. The champion can still be ingested even if they already have 10 debuffs on them. Okay, that's specific, good. No more than one mini mimic can be present in a battle at any time, and no more than one champion can be ingested at any time. The mimic cannot use the feeding time skill to summon more than one mini mimic to battle. Okay, a little bit interesting. It looks like there's going to be one big boss and then a little boss that does the eating part. But yeah, let's check out the kit here for this guy. All right, so the boss's name is actually just Mimic. All right, so it's just Mimic. So here we go. Let's check out what he can do. Is A1, Plunder Pounce. Attacks all enemies, another AoE. Deals additional pure damage equal to 5% of each target's max HP for each buff on them. Okay, so more anti-buffs hate here from the bosses. So the more buffs you have, the more damage you take. 5% max HP. Has a 50% chance of placing decreased attack as well. His A2, 3-turn cooldown, single target hit, places a stun. Will attack all remaining enemies if the stun was not placed. Decrease the turn meter of all enemies without a stun by 30%. Decrease the turn meter of all enemies without stun. So he's going to stun one champion. If that champion doesn't get stunned, he's going to attack everybody else, potentially stunning everybody else. So if you don't get stunned, you lose 30% turn meter. So it's either be stunned or lose 30% turn meter. Interesting. So I think the best case scenario is somehow have him target. He must have some kind of targeting. Have him target a champion, and then they always get stunned. If one champion gets stunned, at least the rest of your champions. No, that's not true. I think this effect always happens. Decrease the turn meter of all enemies without stun. So even if he stuns one champion, the rest of your team will get turn meter pushback. And if that one champion resists the first stun, then he will attack everybody on your team. Kind of interesting. I don't know. Seems overly complicated, but okay, sure. Let's check out his A3, Feeding Time. So 5-turn cooldown. Summon a mini mimic to battle who ingests the enemy with the highest crit damage for 4 turns. The mini mimic's HP is equal to 20% of the mimic's HP. Its defense is equal to 70% of the mimic's defense, and it has the same resistance as the mimic. At the start of the mimic's turn, the mini mimic deals damage equal to 25% of the target's champion's current HP. After 4 turns, or when the mini mimic is defeated, the target champion is returned to battle and the mini mimic leaves the battle. Only one champion can be transferred into the mini mimic at a time. Places a 30% decreased speed on all other enemies for 2 turns. So feeding time. One guy basically eats a guy, and then he places decreased speed on everybody. Okay, at the start of the mimic's turn, the mini mimic deals damage equal to 25% of the target champion's current HP. Check out his passive here. Fortune's Feast. Passive. For every 3 buffs the enemy team receives, decrease the cooldown of feeding time 1 turn. At the start of the mimic's turn, if there is a mini mimic present in battle, heal the mimic by 25% of its max HP. But that's a big heal. That's a big ass heal. All turn meter reduction effects are decreased by 50% when used against the boss. That means it can be turn meter reduced. I mean, I believe Dark Fae has some kind of turn meter resistance as well, but that means it can be turn meter reduced and turn meter controlled, which is a really big thing. In terms of the almighty immunity, cooldown effects, all the hard CC stuff, awakening boost, strength, max HP cannot exceed 5%, HP burn cannot exceed 1%. Okay, so I guess the way to defeat this guy is turn meter control, and potentially resistance. Like if you resist the stun, resist his turn meter pushback, that could be okay too. Also, this feeding time, all you have to do is kill the mimic. You just need to kill the mimic. Hmm. And this passive, reduce the cooldown of feeding time by 1 turn. The mini mimic's gonna be on the field for 4 turns, which basically will allow the mimic, the boss mimic, to basically fully heal itself. So you have to kill the mimic first. Sorry, the mini mimic, and then you target the mimic again. But then you can't overly buff yourself because they will get the mini mimic back, and then it will start healing again. So it's a little bit of a yo-yo kind of situation here. So if you have like turn meter stuff, that would be pretty helpful. I mean, kind of just reminds me of like Dark Fate. Honestly, it just kind of reminds me of Dark Fate. Dark Fate takes away your guys, mirrors your guys, has various AoE abilities, but can be turn meter controlled. She also brings like the fear and stuff, so some CC stuff similar to this stun ability. So I think you probably approached it similar to Dark Fate. Lots of turn meter control. How about speed down? Will speed down work on him? I think speed down will work on him. It doesn't say he's immune to speed down. So yeah, it's just another Dark Fate in my opinion. You just speed down and then turn meter drop him. So allure, um, Newt would probably be pretty good against this guy. But that's just kind of like my ideas here, my first initial assessments. But it's a little bit of an interesting mechanic because you kind of spit out a small little dummy enemy, but the heals is pretty big, 25% heal. So the big mimic will just fully heal up once they spit out the mini mimic. And then of course you can kind of manipulate this, right? So highest crit damage you can kind of manipulate which one they eat. So it probably be taken advantage of. Well, anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for the video here. We just went over the 2 new bosses and their kits, the Mimic and then the Trovemaster. I think both of them, are interesting, are a little bit different, but still somewhat familiar. And I think we identified a couple ways to kind of deal with them. So block buffs versus the Trovemaster, and then decrease speed and turn meter control against the Mimic boss here, which is, yeah, I mean, reasonable ways to handle them. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully the stat requirement isn't like absolutely insane, but we'll see when the content gets released. I wonder if there's going to be more bosses or whether it's just going to be these 2. I know there's going to be one more, that the tree, it looks like a tree, or the forest boss, the main boss. But maybe there's going to be more. Who knows? They did mention 7 new bosses, so there's probably going to be more coming on the pipeline real soon here. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching until the end. Appreciate you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about these 2 bosses. Do you guys think that I'm on the right track, thinking block buffs and then turn meter control with decreased speed against the mimic? Or you guys have any other cool ideas as well based on what you guys see here in the kits? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.